Welcome to the deep dive. So, you sent over the user manual for the Behringer RD-8 mkII classic analog drum machine,
That's right.
and we're here to really dig into what makes it tick. They call it a past masterpiece rejuvenated.
Yeah, that's the tagline.
So, our mission today basically is to unpack its core features, the 16 analog sounds, that 64-step sequencer, the wave designer, the filter, and see how they all work together for making beats without hopefully getting too bogged down in the super technical stuff.
Exactly. The manual's intro lays out those main bits. We'll explore how they interact, what kinds of sounds, what kinds of rhythms you can actually get out of it.
Okay, great. Let's start with what they call its heart, the analog sound engine.
Right.
The manual makes a big deal about it being an authentic recreation, says it's no digital clone, mentions legendary analog circuits.
Yeah, they emphasize that a lot.
So, for someone maybe more used to digital drum machines or software, what's the actual difference they'd hear with this? What does analog mean for the sound?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, with analog circuits, the sound generation is physical. It's not algorithms calculating waveforms. It's actual electronic components interacting.
Okay.
And that often leads to, well, people describe it as warmer, maybe more organic. You get these tiny variations like in the decay of the kick drum, maybe a little bit different each time.
Ah, right. Not perfectly identical hits.
Exactly. It's that sort of subtle richness, maybe some natural saturation or distortion if you push it, things that are, let's say, harder to perfectly mimic digitally.
Yeah.
Part of the character.
That makes sense. Kind of like an imperfect perfection thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so this analog heart gives us 16 drum sounds. The manual says they have extra parameters and this global accent feature. Can you just run through the basic sounds it has?
Sure. You've got the essentials, of course,
Yeah.
bass drum, snare drum. Then you have toms, and they've got dual sounds, so low tom or low conga, mid tom or mid conga, high tom or high conga.
Okay, so some flexibility there.
Definitely. Then, for more texture, rim shot or claves, hand clap or maracas, and a cowbell.
Can't forget the cowbell.
Never. And then your cymbals, a cymbal sound, open hat, and closed hat. So 16 voices total.
And the accent, what does that do?
The accent is pretty useful. It's like a global emphasis. You can program certain steps in your sequence to hit harder, basically boosting the level across all the sounds playing on that step. Make certain beats really pop.
Right, so you can add dynamic punch across the whole kit on specific beats.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm.
Now, beyond just the basic sound of those 16 voices, it looks like you can tweak each one individually quite a bit.
Oh, absolutely. This is where you really start shaping things.
Hmm.
Each voice usually has a level knob, obviously, for the mix.
Standard stuff.
Yeah. Then, where it makes sense, like for the kick or toms, there's tuning to change the pitch,
Uh-huh.
a tone control, which is usually simple filter to adjust brightness. Decay, naturally, controls how long the sound rings out.
Okay.
The snare has a specific snappy control for that buzzy snare wire sound.
Right, the rattle.
Exactly. The hand clap has an offset control which kind of changes its timing feel, makes it looser or tighter.
Interesting.
And for those dual sounds like tom conga, there's just a switch to choose which one you're using for that voice slot. So yeah, quite a bit of control per sound.
Okay, so you can really sculpt the raw analog tones. Let's move on to arranging them. The sequencer.
The brain of the operation.
The manual calls the 64-step sequencer one of the most powerful step sequencers ever created. Big claim. What makes it so powerful, besides just having 64 steps?
Well, 64 steps is a good start, lets you make longer patterns than, say, a classic 16-step one, but it's the other features stacked on top, things like polymeter.
You mentioned that, yeah, different lengths for different tracks.
Exactly. So your kick could be 16 steps, your hat 15 steps. They phase against each other constantly. Creates really complex, evolving rhythms.
Okay, that sounds cool. What else?
You've got step repeat and note repeat for stutter effects and rolls, real-time triggering so you can just play rhythms in live, and then track mute and track solo for performance. It's quite a package.
Pulmonar sounds like a rabbit hole in itself. But let's cover the basics first. How do you actually program a beat in step mode? What's the workflow?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. First, you pick a song slot, then a pattern number within that song, set your tempo with the data knob,
Right.
then you hit record. Choose the drum voice you want to program, say the bass drum.
Okay.
Now you see the 16-step buttons. If the sequencer is running, a light sweeps across them. That's the playhead. You just press the buttons where you want the bass drum to hit, or you can tap the trigger pad in time while it's recording.
So you can input steps visually or play them in?
Yep. Then you select the next voice, like the snare, and put in its steps. Repeat for all your sounds. Pretty intuitive, really.
Got it. So those 16 buttons show you a slice of the pattern, and you just punch in the hits. And once you've made a pattern, playing it back is just a pattern mode.
Exactly. You press the pattern button, then press the step button corresponding to the pattern number you want to play. The manual points out a nice touch. The step buttons light up white if they have a pattern stored, and the currently playing step shows up as red.
Nice visual feedback. Keeps you oriented.
Definitely helps.
Okay, so playback is easy. But you mentioned live performance features within pattern mode. What can you do on the fly?
Yeah, this is where it gets fun for playing live. You've got step repeat, hold down the trigger button, and the current step just loops. You can set it to repeat 1, 2, 4, or 8 times. Great for quick fills or little breakdowns.
Instant variations.
Totally. Then there's note repeat. Similar idea, but it repeats the currently selected drum voice when you hold trigger, again at different speeds. Perfect for snare rolls or hi-hat ratchets. And you can even record those repeats into the pattern if you're in step record mode.
Ooh, recordable repeats. Nice. What else?
Track mute and solo. Really essential. You can mute individual drum sounds or solo one just by pressing the corresponding voice select button while holding mute or solo. The LEDs show you what's muted, red, or soloed white.
Great for live arranging, breaking down the beat.
Absolutely. And finally, instant pattern switching. Hold the pattern button, hit another step button that has a pattern stored, one of the white ones, and it jumps straight to that pattern. Seamless transitions.
Wow, okay. That's a solid set of live tools. Definitely more than just hitting play on a loop.
Yeah, it encourages interaction.
Now, what if you want to string these patterns together into a full song? How does that work?
That's pattern chaining mode. You pick a song slide first, then go into pattern mode, hit record. Now you select the patterns you want in your song in order using the step buttons.
Okay, so you're building a sequence of patterns.
Right, and crucially, the manual says make sure auto scroll is on. Then you use the length button and the data knob to set how many times each pattern in your chain should repeat before it moves to the next one.
Ah, so you can say play pattern 1 4 times, then pattern 2 8 times?
Precisely. You build up your song structure like that. Verse, chorus, whatever. You can use the and keys to navigate through the chain you've built. You just save the whole thing as a song.
Okay, so pattern chaining builds the structure within a song. The manual also mentions song mode for chaining songs together. How's that different?
Think of song mode as your set list organizer. Pattern chaining makes one song out of multiple patterns. Song mode lets you take several of those completed songs and chain them together.
Ah, for a whole live set, maybe?
Exactly. If you have, say, 3 distinct tracks you've made using pattern chaining, you can use song mode to make the RD-8 play song 1, then automatically go to song 2, then song 3.
What's the key difference in how it plays back?
The main thing is, in song mode, each song in the chain plays completely from start to finish before it moves to the next one. You can't jump mid-song. It plays the whole arrangement.
Gotcha. Full tracks back to back.
Yep. And there's an autosave feature, too, in song mode, if record is on. Just pressing a step button selects that song as the next in the chain and saves it automatically.
Handy. Okay, so pattern chaining for song parts, song mode for the whole set list. Makes sense. Let's swing back to sound shaping. We've got the individual voice controls, but there's also the wave designer and the analog filter. Tell me about the wave designer first. What's its role?
The wave designer is basically a dynamics tool, like a transient shaper. It has just 2 knobs, attack and sustain.
Okay.
Attack lets you make the very start of a sound punchier, sharper, or you can soften it. Sustain controls how long the body of the sound lasts, make things ring out more, or tighten them up, make them more staccato.
So you can add punch to a kick or make a clap shorter.
Exactly that kind of thing. The manual notes that 12 o'clock on both knobs is the bypass or neutral position. Oh, an important point. The headphone out is before the wave designer and filter. So what you hear in headphones isn't processed by them.
Ah, good to know. So it affects the main outs. Okay, what about the analog filter? It's described as a 12 dB dual mode filter. Break that down.
Sure. Dual mode means it can be either a low-pass filter, LPF, or a high-pass filter, HPF. There's a button, HPF, to switch between them.
Right.
LPF is the default. It cuts high frequencies, lets lows pass. Turn the cutoff knob down, it gets darker, more muffled.
Standard filter stuff?
Yep. Hit the HPF button, and it flips. Now it cuts the low frequencies and lets the highs pass. Turn the cutoff knob up, and it thins out the sound from the bottom end.
Okay, LPF for sweeps down, HPF for sweeps up, and the 12 dB.
That refers to the slope, how sharply it cuts frequencies. 12 dBs per octave is a pretty standard musical sounding slope. Not super gentle, not brutally steep.
Got it. And resonance.
The resonance boosts the frequencies right around the cutoff point. So as you sweep the cutoff, the resonance adds this sort of peak, this emphasis. At high settings, it can get quite whistly or even self-oscillate, creating its own tone.
Adds character.
Definitely. And the really cool part is you can record cutoff knob movements into the sequencer. Filter sweeps automated within your pattern.
Oh, wow. Okay. That adds a whole layer of animation. Now, how do you choose which sounds go through this FX bus, the wave designer and the filter? You don't send everything through, presumably?
No, you choose, there's a send button in the FX section. You press it, it flashes orange. Now you're in assignment mode.
Okay.
Then you use the voice select buttons for the 16 sounds. Press the ones you want to send to the effects, their LEDs turn pink.
So kick, snare, maybe hats, whatever you want.
Exactly. Select all the ones you want, then press send again. It stops flashing and glows solid white if anything is assigned. That tells you the FX bus is active.
Simple assignment and easy to see if it's on.
Yeah, and there's a shortcut. Hold, tap, hold, and press send to clear all assignments quickly.
Nice. Okay, let's dive into some of those going deeper features the manual mentions. Polymeter came up earlier. Can you give a bit more on what kind of rhythms that actually creates? It sounds potentially chaotic.
It can be, but in a good way. It creates these long, evolving rhythmic cycles. Because the patterns don't line up neatly every bar, the relationship between, say, the kick and a snare keeps shifting.
So it avoids repetition.
Massively.
Yeah.
You get these unexpected syncopations and grooves emerging over time just because the loops are different lengths. It's great for techno, ambient, experimental stuff, anything where you want less predictability. The manual does warn, though. Step repeat gets disabled in poly mode.
Ah, okay, a trade-off. Still, sounds very powerful for non-standard groups.
It really is.
What about autofill? How would you use that?
Autofill is purely a live performance thing, really. You program some short patterns specifically as fills.
Like little drum breaks.
Exactly. Then, when your main pattern is playing, you hit the autofill button, then press one of the step keys where you stored a fill. The machine plays that fill pattern once through.
Is that the main pattern?
Yeah, it injects the fill. The manual suggests 4 8-step fills work well, but you can make them longer. After the fill plays, it automatically jumps back to the main pattern you were on before, unless you selected a different main pattern during the fill.
So it's like having a bank of fills ready to trigger on the fly. Keeps things interesting.
Precisely. Adds spontaneity.
Cool. Then there's parameter chaining. That sounds complex. What does it let you do?
It allows certain settings to change automatically when you switch patterns or songs. Think about things like tempo, swing amount, flam settings, probability.
Wait, probability and flam, we haven't covered those.
Right. Briefly. Probability lets you set a chance percentage that a programmed step will actually play each time the pattern loops. Flam adds a very quick double hit like a drag.
Okay, some more ways to add variation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And parameter chaining lets you decide if those settings, plus things like which tracks are muted soloed, FX assignments, even the filter mode, LP, FHPF, should stay the same globally, or if they should change when you go to the next pattern or the next song in a chain.
Whoa, so you could have a sequence where the tempo ramps up automatically or the filter opens up on the chorus pattern.
Exactly. You program those changes as part of the chain rather than having to tweak knobs live. It allows for much more dynamic, pre-planned arrangements.
That sounds incredibly useful for structuring evolving tracks. The manual also lists sync options. Internal, MIDI, USB, trig. Why are these important?
Sync is crucial if you're using the RD-8 with anything else. Another drum machine, a synth sequencer, a computer DAW.
Keeping everything in time.
Exactly. Internal means the RD-8 is the master clock. MIDI and USB let it sync to tempo from other MIDI gear or your computer. Trig lets it sync to an analog pulse clock from older gear or modular synths. Having all these options just ensures it can play nicely with pretty much anything.
Good compatibility, and it seems like the MIDI and USB go beyond just sync.
Oh yeah. It sends and receives MIDI notes, so you can trigger its sounds from a keyboard or DAW. You can control parameters via MIDI CC messages. There's MIDI mapping, so you can define which MIDI note triggers which sound.
Flexible integration.
And then you've got the hardware outs. Those trigger outs can send pulses to control external analog gear. And maybe most importantly for studio work, 11 independent analog outputs.
11. Wow. So you can send almost every sound out separately.
Pretty much. Kick, snare, hats, toms. Allows you to record each sound to its own track in your DAW and process them individually with external effects or plugins. Huge flexibility for mixing.
That's serious connectivity. Okay, finally, customization and control. Sounds like there's a deep settings menu.
There really is. You press the settings button and use the step keys to navigate. You can set MIDI channels, USB MIDI behavior, tons of clock preferences, tempo, swing, probability, flam, and importantly, where those settings apply, globally per song or per pattern.
Ah, linking back to parameter chaining.
Exactly. You customize the MIDI note map, set preferences for how chaining works, the default filter state, polymode behavior, step size, auto scroll, mute solo behavior, again, often with global song pattern scope.
Yep, it's deep.
It keeps going. Specific perimeter settings, random triggering options, step probability, flam amount per step, note repeat programming per step, step size again, sync modes, trigger out assignments, and firmware updates. It's comprehensive.
That's an understatement. It sounds like you could spend weeks just exploring the settings menu.
You could, but you don't have to dive that deep to get started.
Right. And is there a quicker way to adjust common things like tempo or swing?
Yes, thankfully. There's the data mode button. Pressing that cycles the main data encoder through controlling tempo, swing, probability, and flam directly. Much quicker for adjustments on the fly.
That's sensible. Okay, wow. We've covered a lot, from the analog chord to the deepest settings. If you had to boil it down, what are the real standout strengths of the RD-8 mkII based on this manual?
I'd say first, the authentic analog sound engine.
Yeah.
That's its foundation. Second, the sequencer is genuinely powerful and flexible, especially with things like perimeter, the repeats, and the live performance features. Third, the sound shaping tools, the wave designer and the dual mode filter, with routing and automation add a lot of sonic range. And finally, just the sheer depth of control, from individual sounds to sequencing to connectivity, makes it adaptable for both studio work and playing live.
It sounds like it really invites you to get hands-on and experiment.
Definitely. There's a lot under the hood.
So, a final thought for everyone listening, thinking about this mix of classic analog sound and these quite modern deep sequencing features, what could you do with that? What kind of complex rhythms might you uncover with perimeter? Or what textures could you carve out with that wave designer and filter combination? Something to chew on for your own music making.
Absolutely. Lots of potential there.
Well, thanks for walking us through the manual. That was a great deep dive.
My pleasure.